It is a cold and freezing morning today, and I'm going to take you on a ride here on my bicycle here. The sun is just coming up, and I have a special topic that I want to address today, and I'm all wearing extra clothes, and I even wear long johns to keep myself warm. But luckily there is no wind, so that is nice. It is a beautiful day. I'm just driving down my street here. So today, even though it's kind of funny that I address you as my audience, I want to let you know about the importance in embodied language of the absence of an audience. Yeah, the absence of an audience. So when you have embodied language, there is no audience. There's just you speaking. But there's not actually, you can say you are listening, but you are listening as much as you're speaking. So your listening is not you being an audience to your speaking. Your listening is happening at the same rate as speaking. And so your listening is making an audience, you could say unnecessary. No, not unnecessary. Yeah, kind of. Because in disembodied language, in which you do not listen to yourself, you always need somebody else to listen to you. Yeah. Or you need to listen to somebody else. That is another aspect of disembodied language. Yeah. So you gotta get this clear, that in disembodied language, in which you do not listen to yourself, you always end up listening to somebody else, or you end up trying to make other people listen to you. Yeah. But in embodied language, in which you are listening to yourself, there is no need for any audience. And I just wanted to talk with you about this, because I noticed that this is also why I make these videos, of course, and this is also why I currently do not go to the open mic anymore. I used to go to the open mic. Yeah, open mic where I used to perform my songs. The songs which you can hear on this channel. And the songs which I have rewritten. Yeah, because I have rewritten a whole bunch of songs that have been sang by many other people. And I give my updated version of these songs. And so, although I have enjoyed my time at the open mic, I never quite enjoyed the audience. It's interesting how that is, how I have always been annoyed with and troubled by and disturbed by the audience. I've always felt that way. Moreover, I felt that the performances of other people, they were also equally annoying to me. So I felt annoyed by the audience, and I felt also annoyed being myself the audience to other people, their so-called performance. I hated their songs. I hated everybody's songs. Now, I hate it. Occasionally I like somebody. But for the most part, I just hate everybody's songs. And why is that? Well, it is because they are just all very pretentious people, and who want other people to listen to them. And that kind of background, to me, is antithetical to creativity, to art, to beauty. Yeah. So if I say what I say because of somebody else and not because of me, if somehow I put myself last or put myself down, or I don't know, I erase myself because supposedly it's all about others, then I produce something which is really horrible. And people have done so down the ages, and we have all praised it as if people have sacrificed themselves, or as if they have done a great thing by bringing it out. Well, we all know about all kinds of famous people who have still died using drugs and living miserable lives and could never really become happy, could never really, even though they had all the wealth, even though they had everything, and supposedly they were singing about their problems, and everybody supposedly felt as if they were contributing something because they said something, the Bob Dylans of this world, they said something in their songs which they could relate to. So they have done something great. No, they have not done anything great, because they have not truly expressed themselves. And to express yourself is only possible without an audience. So here I am, riding my bicycle. I am without an audience. And that is how my embodied language works. And there is no other way to have embodied language than in this way. Actually, even though it is just below zero, it's not even that cold. It's amazing. I was riding my bicycle not too long ago, and it felt like it was so incredibly cold. But that's just when it was really windy also. And today, even though it's just below freezing, I am not even that cold, but of course I am specially dressed for the occasion. Anyway, to continue with my exploration, I have always actually, retrospectively, I realized that I've always done better performing, and I'm using a word now which perhaps should be explained as well. Because when you are playing without an audience, you're not performing, you're just enjoying yourself, yeah? And so it's a whole different world that you have entered when there is no audience. And so I live in that world. I create that world. Isn't that pretty? The sun is coming up in the early morning. I create that world with my embodied language. And I've always felt, although I was not clear about it back then, but I've always felt that the audience was bothering me. And yes, and so whenever people start to behave to please others or to have an effect on others, they are kind of moving away from themselves, you could say. And when you lose this sense that there is an audience because you're just talking with yourself, you're just talking and having embodied language, then the whole notion of trying to be busy with others, whether it is to influence them, to make them do this or to make them do that, to make them feel this way, to make them feel that, all of that is just gone. You're not doing any of that. So to the extent that anyone is busy with that. They're always referring to, or they're always involved in their disembodied language. And in disembodied language, we also say, there's a Greek saying I remember, because it was in the theater, where in the town where I grew up. It said above the stage there was a sort of a banner which was made with an inscription, and it said Vox Populi Vox Dei. Vox Populi Vox Dei. I still remember this because I went to the theater quite a lot when I was younger. And partially that was because I had an uncle who was an actor, and I believe he's still alive. And he was quite famous as an actor in the Netherlands. And I went with him as a kid to the studios where they made TV programs. But I also went with him to the theater a couple of times, where they were either performing or where they were rehearsing. And so, as a young man, my uncle took me with him a couple of times, and it was really fun. And I was intrigued with this whole acting business and this whole stage and everything. And I myself also felt at some point that I wanted to become an actor. And I was in some place and I auditioned to come to acting school. And I was in acting school for a year. Can you believe that? I really was. I was in acting school for a year. And in acting school, I found out that I did not want to act. Isn't that something? In acting school, I found out that I just wanted to be myself. But going back to the theater where I read this, this Latin inscription, Vox Populi Vox Dei, that means there is no better judge than the audience. There's no better judge than the audience. That is catastrophic. No, there is no better judge than the audience. Which means if the audience likes it, then it is a good play or something like that. And if the audience doesn't like it, then we don't want to watch it. And and then there was William Shakespeare, of course, who says that all the world's a stage and all men are merely players. Oh, really? And everybody kept repeating that for 100 million times, as if that is the most profound statement that was ever made. But going back again to embodied language, in embodied language there is no audience. And so, no, there is no judgment either from an audience about which, who's going to judge the performance. There's no performance. So when there's no performance, there's also no judgment about the performance. So it's interesting how the judgment, as well as the performance go together. And once you have embodied language, there is no judgment because you're not performing. And that can be very dramatic. That can be very intense. That can be very sad, painful. It can be all these things. Absolutely. It can be very profound. It can be very quiet. But I notice that when I record my songs, and of course it doesn't always go right, Sometimes you make mistakes, you want to do it again, and you want to do it right. So you do it again. And sometimes you just say, okay, well, I guess this is good enough. I'm not gonna endlessly redo it because I have to have it perfect. No, I don't have to have it perfect. I am good enough the way it is. And yes, I do not have to be a virtuoso to have a song. And I do not even need to write my own melody. Actually, there's all these melodies which I like. Once I hear them, once I hear these melodies, I just say, oh yeah, that's a really good dreadful song. Yeah. The other day I made a nice song. It was a song which is my version of Townes Van Zandt. He had a song, Waiting Around to Die. And that was a very sad song. And so because of that song, I suddenly realized, like, oh, I read something about Townes Van Zandt, and apparently Bob Dylan, he who I already mentioned in this video, as you may have noticed, Bob Dylan, he appreciated Townes Van Zandt, and I believe he even sang one of his songs. But in any case, Bob Dylan also had a lot of troublesome songs, and so in addition to my song of Townes Van Zandt, miserable song, I got another miserable song. Bob Dylan's "It Ain't Me, Babe." So if you happen to be listening and if you happen to hear this, check it out. It's going to come to you soon. Yeah, I'm announcing my next song, which is going to be recorded, and maybe even today. But I want to post this video first, so I do not know how long it takes for this video to pop up on my YouTube channel. Anyway, I like to continue to talk about the absence of an audience, because even when I was very young, I escaped my parents' house. Basically, I was always nowhere to be found, and I wasn't around to do chores. I was notorious for that, and my sisters and brothers, they hated me for that. That I always, I don't know, you could say, escaped responsibility or escaped doing my part. And there is some truth to that. However, what it really now appears to be or have been all about was that I didn't want their scrutiny. I didn't want their judgment. I didn't want their being an audience to me. And I felt their being an audience to me, also my parents being an audience to me, especially my father, I felt a burden because of that. I felt inhibited because of that. I felt imprisoned because of the audience. I felt limited by my audience, and I felt intimidated. And and so I went in my life, I'm 66 years old, I went through all sorts of experiences in which I have, you could say, experimented with having the kind of audience that I want and having perhaps the perfect audience, but there is no such thing as a perfect audience, because all audiences are the same. All audiences are people who watch and listen to someone perform. And one thing leads to the other, or one thing evokes the other, or elicits the other. I mean, let's just face it, anyone who performs, regardless of how well they are, how good they are, regardless of how capable they are, how much of a virtuoso they are, and how great they are in singing their songs and playing their instruments and all that kind of stuff. There is always, with an audience, there's always a sense of nervousness, a sense of fear, a sense of being judged. And that, yeah, you can say, oh, that's excitement, and that is, we use that to our advantage. It makes us even better, and that's just the thrill of acting. That's the thrill of performing. No, it's not the thrill of performing. It is the problem which we haven't solved. Because also in our language, we have never put together the speaker and the listener, which of course only come together when we have embodied language. And so we have always struggled trying to please the listener in terms of our disembodied language. And make no mistake, in disembodied language, the listener is never ever satisfied. I've said it. And you can say the speaker is never satisfied, but the speaker doesn't matter. It is the listener who is never satisfied about the speaker. And if, let's say, you were to have the experiment in which you, as a speaker, begin to talk with, you could say, that part of you, or the you as a listener, and if you let the listener speak so that the speaker can listen, if you were ever to do that experiment, which is of course kind of crazy, but okay, you can do it. You can, become inventive and start to turn things around, flip the script, so to speak. And what would you say to yourself as a speaker? Okay, well, what would you say to yourself as a listener? Aha, all right, well, and how would you as a speaker respond to what you as a listener says to you as a speaker? There's a whole different line of reasoning there, which you have probably never even considered, but it is possible. And once you do that, you find out that this listener is, of course, always the problem. It's not a coincidence that we consider not speaking the problem. No, we consider, the real problem we're all having is that there's too much speaking going on, but too little listening. There's a reason for that. Yeah. There is too little listening going on, but it has nothing to do with listening to somebody else. It has to do with listening to ourselves, and nobody even seems to get that. It's just so hilarious that people keep saying that. Oh, speaker, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Yeah, says who? Says the audience. Yeah, okay. So it is a big conundrum that we haven't been able to unravel, because you can only unravel it if you have embodied language like I do. Yeah. And now I'm here in the park, and you can see the ground is white with frost. And it starts to get really freaking cold now. My hands are starting to freeze, even though I wear my gloves. And my face is also starting to get really cold. But I am brave. because I am without an audience. Oh yeah, and I was going to talk more with you about the fact that I've always enjoyed, even as a child already, being without an audience. And yes, I have also had my problems with it, because we all believe we want an audience, and then you could say, craved attention or recognition. I craved approval. I wanted to belong. I wanted to fit in. All of that deals with the audience. Yeah, look how beautiful this is. Yeah. Lots of water coming down the hills, and this whole place was just flooded the other day. Now it has sort of receded again a little bit, but it is so so much water coming down the mountains. Oh wow, look at that. Big trees here floated down. That's great. So on the one hand, I wanted to be, it's kind of like a dichotomy, a conflict, that I wanted to be alone, I wanted to be left alone, but I also felt then again rejected. I felt like I didn't fit in. I felt like I wasn't good enough to get the love, the attention, the approval of others. And then that was a problem again. Good morning. But hey, I survived all that. And it is interesting to look back on these times, because I now know that I always wanted to be without an audience. And if there was any kind of appreciation in me for, you could say, those activities that I was involved in as a young kid, because my parents, they were Catholic, and so they took us to church. And of course there's this church ritual, and there's this singing that's going on. If there was any appreciation for any of that, I wouldn't so much describe that as a spiritual phenomenon or a religious phenomenon. I would rather describe that, for me, as the absence of an audience. And of course, I'm looking back now, and I'm saying that only after many years of having, you could say, explored my own problem with the audience. But to me, that is what it was all about. So when there was, let's say, for instance, and we also did that in school, we sang many songs in school. When I was in elementary school, we sang many songs. It seems like every day. At the Boy Scouts, we sang songs around the campfire. Whenever people were singing songs, we were just... It is interesting that when we are really together, when we are truly united, when we're all doing the same thing, when we are not trying to rock the boat, stand out with this and that, then all of a sudden this notion of an audience, it drops away. Isn't that interesting? And yes, I've always felt, wow, that has always inspired me. That you could just be singing and staring at the fire and realize that we were all just staring at the fire, and we were all just singing and having a good time. And we were all just in this one place. Yeah, we say worshipping, but we were just there to be peaceful. We were there to be together. And that means there is no other, there is no audience. We were one. Yeah. ideally, of course, because, you know, that's just my personal experience of it. And then later on, I remember my father. He took many pictures, and he had a camera. And but whenever he was going to make a picture, he wanted it to be a certain way. And I understand that, but it was annoying to anyone who was in that picture, because you had to pose and wait for him to get ready with his camera. And by the time he was ready with his camera, I don't know what he was doing. I never was into taking pictures, but he seemed like to take forever to make that picture. Anyways, I remember as a kid I was always feeling impatient, and I never didn't want to be photographed. I just hated to be photographed. I just felt so like, oh my God, no. And so I also had you could say, a bad experience with, I don't know, looking in the picture. I was looking a certain way, and I didn't like the way that I was looking, because in many of these pictures, I look kind of disturbed, and I look kind of, I don't know, frustrated. But I survived all that. And yeah, as I am saying today, all of that had to do with my early inclination that, I didn't want to be photographed by an audience. And yeah, I've also read other things about people who have something to say about this, but you know, this is not about other people, this is about me. And I am now very glad that I have always been this way. Hello. Because it all fits beautifully with my embodied language. I remember also that at some point I was at the house of a friend, a lady friend at that time, and that was when I smoked for the first time. I smoked hashish, and we were sitting on a balcony of her parents' house. Actually, she still lived with her parents, and I was still, I don't know, maybe I was 18 years old or so, maybe even younger than that, I don't know. I was sitting on her balcony, and her parents were not home at that time. And we were smoking some hashish, and we were stoned. And at certain moments she just took out a recorder, a little recorder, and I had been playing a recorder as a child. We learned how to play the recorder at a young age, and not that I was very good at it, or not that I continued with it, but we did that in school, and all of a sudden she took out this recorder and she played along with the song that was on the. She had the door open. She was playing a song of a song, maybe Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young or something. And so, okay, that's what she did, and she played along with that song, and that was really interesting. How it sounded. It sounded really good, and it was a very calm song, very simple song, and she could play along with it really well. And I was just really impressed with her ability to do that. And then when the song had finished, she carried on playing on the recorder, and she was just playing a melody that, I don't know, she made up, similar to what she was playing before, and as the song, and I realized, oh, look how pretty this is, this moss on this rock. Isn't that pretty? I love that. I have that in my garden also. And that's why I like to have oops. Voilà. That's what I also like about having a rock in my garden like that. So yeah, she was playing that recorder, and of course I was also stoned. And no, we were not in love, or we were not having even a relationship, because she was with other men. But we were friends at that time, and and I admired her play. Her play was really smooth, and then next thing you know, she just handed the recorder to me, and she says, "You play something." And I took the recorder, and it was like I knew how to play. I had not played the recorder since my early childhood, when I had learned a little bit about that in school. And yes, you know, I knew how to place my fingers and so forth, but I had not played anymore. And so I took that recorder and I played. And yes, I was of course stoned, but it was such a beautiful experience that I could play, and that it would just happen. and it was really like, wow, I could do this. And ever since that moment, I got myself a recorder, and I began to play the recorder. And yeah, I throughout my years in which I smoked hashies and weed, that was kind of like in my late teens that I did that. I always had my recorders with me, and later I even had a side flute and stuff, because I enjoyed also playing on that, and I would just be high and be without an audience. And yeah, I enjoyed the marijuana, I enjoyed the hashish, and now I should tell you the whole full story, because there's another aspect to the story which comes to memory all of a sudden. Just a second here. So, you know, back in the days, I of course went to the church, and I had moved out of the neighborhood, but my parents were still living there, and the old priest was also still there. He was getting very old, and then I asked the priest if I was allowed to play in the church, but not in the church while the people were there, but when the people were gone. And the priest, he let me play in the church. And I was of course stoned out of my brain because I smoked a few puffs before I entered. And he would let me in the church, and I would just play my songs in the church with a nice, vibration in the church that sounds so good. And I would be all by myself in the church. And it was so nice because there was no audience. And then one day, and I do not know if I wasn't paying attention or if he had been there all the time. One day I saw that the priest was sitting in the back of the church. He was listening to me. not that he was applauding or not that he was saying anything, but he was listening to my music. Apparently, he apparently appreciated my music. And then many years went by, and I'm skipping here a lot of stuff, but that doesn't matter. I want to create this storyline. Then the priest was about to die. The priest was, very old, and he was actually in the hospital. And I still visited him one time in the hospital, where he was on a breathing machine with pipes coming out of his mouth or whatever, his nose. He had some sort of a mask on, and he was still kept alive. And the sound of this machine that kept him breathing made a sort of wheezing sound, like something like that. It's like really horrible. But he had been good to me, and I was still visiting him. And he said to me at that moment, when he was about to die, he said to me, "Now I am playing my song." And he was referring to me playing flute, huh? And I said, yeah, you sound really good. Yeah. What a story. And if you happen to be a Dutch person and you were in the parish that I lived in, it was called Onze Lieve Vrouw van Altijd Durende Bijstand. That was the parish that is named after Maria, our Mother of Mercy, who is always with us. And in this parish, that was in an area of town, that's where I grew up. It's called, believe it or not, the area is called Rest and Peace. Isn't that amazing? Vrederust. That means peace and rest. Yeah, that's where I grew up. And that's where I came of age. Yeah. Anyways, going back again to the absence of the audience, I always enjoyed the absence of an audience. And yeah, now I have a different view of what I once experienced, and a lot of what I once experienced had to be translated by me into what it really was, because I unknowingly was always wanting to have embodied language. And so with embodied language, everything is different. And everything that I had done was not done for others. It was done for myself. It was done for, you could say, my own edification, my own clarity, my own process of understanding what this is. And there was a big struggle involved in that. There was a big problem involved in that. There was a big torment also and dissatisfaction involved in that. But I not only witnessed this, you could say this problem, because that is another way in which we are all troubled, that we believe we are observing our own problem. We believe that we are the witness to our own problem, and that's a wrong perspective. It cannot be that way. We are not our own audience. We are not Yeah, because that goes on in the name of our so-called consciousness and being aware and being mindful and all that crap. No, you cannot be aware. You cannot be conscious of yourself. You cannot be observing yourself. No, you cannot even listen to yourself. Yeah, that sounds really absurd, but I mean, there's nobody to listen to. And there's nobody listening. Because there is no audience. But, all of this goes on in the name of our disembodied language. And unavoidably, we have many, many problems with ourselves as well as with each other. But primarily with ourselves. Which, of course, always results into problems with others. Because we get it totally wrong. That we are not our own audience. If you have embodied language like I do, and of course, there is only one way to have embodied language. Yeah? There is not my way of having embodied language or your way of having embodied language. No, there is only embodied language in which there is no audience. And as long as there is an audience, you're bound to get derailed again. You're bound to be trapped again in disembodied language. Yeah. So either you say it as it is and then you get clear, or you keep beating around the bush, and that's what everybody does, trying to justify their actions, finding all these reasons why you were the way you were and why you did what you did. But that's all just from the perspective of an audience. From the perspective of who you are, there's never any justification of anything you did. You just did what you did because there was nothing else to do. And a lot of people have, of course, problems with that, because now this puts into question the whole notion of good morning. The whole notion of having morals or being moral, of having a conscience. And it does. Yeah? Because there is no such thing. And yet we all talk as if there is. And we all also accuse each other of not having a conscience. Yeah? And then we pound ourselves on the chest because we have a conscience. Yeah? It's all bullshit. And it all goes on in the name of religious behavior, in the name of spirituality, in the name of psychology also, in the name of philosophy. And we haven't done anything to dismantle this nonsense. Vox populi, vox dei. There's no better judge than the audience. Wow. Now, good luck with that. And then, we are, of course, also stuck with our various forms of government. Yeah, because that's another aspect of all of this, which we completely fail to understand because of our disembodied language. Yeah. Why can't we work it out? Well, we cannot work it out because we keep having disembodied language. Yeah? And as long as we keep having embodied language, we are just creating problems. And the problems keep accumulating. And we cannot address them. We cannot solve them. We can only create more problems. So, there you go. With your so-called democracy. Yeah. Or whatever kind of form of government that you claim is the best. And of course, we gotta admit that there are forms of government which have resulted in or which have, at least to some extent, guaranteed freedom of the individual, yeah, and yet it is equally important to recognize that, yeah, that may be so, but we've never gotten to the embodied language, which is the language of freedom, yeah. And the language of freedom is the language that occurs because we are without an audience. So, and of course you can say, this is all bullshit. And well, if you want to do that, then you go ahead and do that. You are missing out on what I'm talking about. You're missing out on what language actually can do for you if you keep being busy with the audience, in which language seems to be only about others. Yeah? So there's language which is for you, which is embodied language, and there's language which is for others and about others, and which is disembodied language. And yeah, it depends on you, how you want to live your life. I want to live my life and have my language work for me. I've lived the life in which my language wasn't working for me, and I was always trying to adhere to the language as it appealed to others, as it was meaningful to others. And it's just amazing how that is everybody's problem. Look, all this ice here. Oh, my hands are really cold now. But as you can tell, the sun has risen, and I'm heading back home. Yeah. When you have expressed yourself with your embodied language, like I do, you cannot avoid, you cannot deny, you cannot miss the tremendous bliss, the tremendous happiness, the tremendous clarity, the satisfaction, the understanding of everything that wasn't clear before, that wasn't understood before. And so that manifests itself as an enormous release, as an enormous relief, as an enormous fulfillment of what you can be if you drop trying to be something for others, but you're now what you are yourself. You are not what you are for somebody else. Yeah, a flower is not a flower because to please you, or and it does please you because you are pleased with yourself. If you are not pleased with yourself, you don't see that flower. And so, but a flower is just doing what a flower does, and a bird is just doing what a bird does, and a human being could also just do what a human being, as an individual, as a free individual, as an autonomous organism, what he does. And and you do it for as long as you can. You do it for as long as you live, as long as you have energy, as long as you want to. And so I know people will be watching this, but to me, you as an audience doesn't matter. I don't care for followers. I don't care for, it all fits with embodied language. I don't care to create a movement. I don't care. It all goes together with, there's no need for any audience. I enjoy making these videos on my own because I am without an audience. I enjoy being without an audience. I enjoy being alone. And this is how I have my embodied language. And there wouldn't be any other way to have embodied language than in this way. And this is not because I have made it that way. No, it's because embodied language is that way. Good morning. How are you doing?
We're good.
You got such a nice little doggy.
Yeah.
Huh?
He's always waiting for treats.
Oh yes, they are like that. The doggy is waiting for treats. You know, in my house, where my wife always feeds snacks to the cat is always begging for treats. And it drives her nuts. But the cat is also kind of like her audience. Not so much mine. Although occasionally the cat just sort of catches my energy, and then we sort of just have a little interaction with each other, and I cuddle him, and he says hello to me and comes to sit with me for a little bit. But yeah, we were all, you know, every human being is an end unto himself, and you are an end unto yourself. But can you handle that? Can you handle that with your language? That's the problem. Our language is not adjusted to that. Our language has never been about that. And you can meditate until you're blue. You can pray and sing and all that, and make beautiful art and whatnot, and enjoy that. But you will never have the language that fits with your individualism, that fits with your freedom. To have that, you need to talk with yourself, listen to yourself, stop your disembodied language, and begin to acknowledge that this is possible. This is something that you haven't done. This is something that, is potentially going to make a huge difference. It does for me, and that's why I continue with it, because this is how I live. Now, it's funny, you know, I am looking at myself and I just go like, hey, you're not supposed to be there. There's no audience, dude. What are you looking at? Get your face out. Get your face out of my sight. Oh man. Yeah, you gotta be a little bit crazy also to enjoy yourself. And perhaps not just a little bit. You gotta be very crazy. Crazy enough to just leave all this stuff behind. Yeah? And courageous enough to follow your own reasoning, because there is this reasoning which pertains to this use of language. We have always said that language is about others. And of course, if what I say is not heard by a listener, if the listener understands ideally what I say, and what I say is meaningful because of a listener, there's no doubt about it. But that listener is me, and I'm understanding myself. And so we have always made this listener somebody else. And so our use of language is based on that, is grounded in that, and that is an incorrect use of language, where the audience is always more important than than the person who is actually being observed by the audience. And as I've said, and once more want to repeat, once the audience is gone, the performer is gone, and there's no act. Yeah, the world is not a stage, and not all men are players. Bullshit. Shakespeare. Nonsense. I don't know where you get it from, but you got it from your disembodied language, dude. Alright, that's a perfect end of today's video. Bye.